Okey-dokey.
I'm not hearing anything.
Chair, I have a point of order.
Thank you.
I'm gonna turn her down just.
I agree with your summation, but the submission of a new staff report goes this on. For the record, my name is Alan Sorum. I'm an attorney for the applicant. I did note that I've got a point of order regarding the case number that the chair just referred to. Yes, the public hearing was closed, but the staff report that was circulated.
So if you would give us a chance to get through the staff report,
Okay,
I think your questions will be answered. What you're looking for.
I'm happy to
With regards to-
defer and let it play out for a bit, yes.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. Okay, so we're ready for staff report introduction.
Okay, we heard, we had the hearing on July 28th, and then we continued the hearing at the August 25th meeting. And at that time, staff had said that they had concerns with the 4 criteria for a concept plan. And the applicant provided revised plans and a revised narrative that the staff agreed fulfilled the criteria. So the staff plan, the revised staff plan agrees with what the applicant said for the criteria. Since then, we've had a revised, there was trying to get my thoughts here. There was a draft order of approval written with some public works notes. The public works memo was finalized, and I was able to provide it to the applicant and provide it to the Planning Commission tonight. The attorney had sent an email on Friday, which I also provided the Planning Commission with a copy of it, that said that the criteria is fulfilled for the concept plan, and that the order of approval, the draft order of approval, had a list of like 27 different conditions that really related to the detailed plan. So I spoke this morning with the Public Works Director, and they were comfortable with taking those conditions out, that we would just include our standard conditions. And I've actually revised the draft order for you tonight. I gave out one, and I can give one to you right now. It doesn't have those because we feel confident that staff feels comfortable that you filled the 4 criteria for the concept plan and the detailed plans. I think that the Public Works, when they made their comments, they were just trying to be concerned about the future. But if you don't feel comfortable with that, that's fine. So I'll give you the new draft order. Oh, just to say, we did keep the same findings of fact, because we did find that you approved the criteria. Did I give you all the copies?
Does that conclude the staff report?
Yes, if I was clear, I hope I was clear.
Now, applicants.
Thank you. I appreciate staff looking at that, conferring amongst themselves, and making that change. So I'll just kind of now looking at the standard conditions of approval. I still think, yeah, big picture, my comments and concerns are the same. Even with this understanding, staff's trying to help us, but let me give some examples as to what that. So number 4 talks about a landscaping plan as an example. The applicant shall remain in substantial conformance with the approved landscaping plan. We haven't submitted a landscaping plan yet. That'll happen in the next phase. And, number 7, construction bonding, bonding would be required if there's any public improvement. Again, like these types of conditions of approval would be totally appropriate at the next stage with the detailed development. But because we're not allowed to, this concept plan doesn't allow us to build anything, and it doesn't allow us to record a plat, and all of these are geared for things that need to be done before you get a permit, things you need to you get before you record the plat. That probably will be the same conditions of approval that will exist very shortly. With that, I just please take it with as with the intent that it's offered. I'm not trying to cause problems. It's just I still think that it's premature to attach the standard conditions, and with staff politely identifying that the evidence in the record does satisfy the criteria, and so typically that precludes the need for it. I would also say, kind of my final comment on the point, I recognize as an example that a 1200C permit, like all these like state approval permits, these are all just, a lot of these are just kind of restating the existence of public work standards and, the need to get permit approvals, the need to go through the city's acceptance process. We understand all of that we'll have to get bonds, that there may be SDCs. But again, I just think it's one application too soon for those conditions. So I'll leave that for the consideration of the planning commission. Hopefully those comments track if you want to ask me questions on it, but that's my request.
All right, thank you. Questions from the commission. I guess I go back to you, Jennifer, on the standard conditions that the attorney was talking about.
I would hold firm. They are our standard conditions. I can understand why the applicant's attorney says that. We do include these standard conditions. They're kind of, they just keep everybody understanding that what will need to be submitted going forward. But if it's an issue, this is only a concept plan. If we're all on the same page, that the standard conditions will likely be included in the next phase. That's all.
Is there discussion from the commission? Okay, so I think what we have here is a standard conditions that have been there for a long time that have been issued with conceptual plan. All right, and what you're asking is for potentially those to be pulled out of there. Do you think it's going to make a difference in the process as it moves forward?
Yeah.
This is Natalie Janey, my civil engineer. Natalie, the question was, do we think that the standard conditions would impact this going forward? What was your thought on that?
They're not necessary, and it's an extra step that could be a hindrance in the next step. So requiring things that aren't required now could put a roadblock where one doesn't need to exist, if that makes sense. We don't need to have a 1,200 seat net. We couldn't apply for one if we wanted to. We don't need to have in like a reference to as-bills. We are nowhere near where we would ask. So they just, it's an extra roadblock where my fear is that the next step, then someone can say, well, you don't have street acceptance. No, obviously we don't have street acceptance, but so I don't like having extra things in the way that don't need to be there. And that's what this feels like it is.
Appreciate that. Okay. Jennifer, so what's our authority? Can we remove those from?
Yes, you can.
All right. Very good. Further discussion from the. Who said it? I think we need to word. So your draft order includes those, correct?
It does.
Okay, so we're gonna have to modify it. So that's the modify to remove the standard conditions. We're ready for a motion.
I move that the Stayton Planning Commission approve the application for conceptual master plan development plan for Brandy Dalton Multi-Tech Engineering at 1601 Oriole Street. Land use file number 11-0724 and adopt the draft order with the following changes: removal of the standard conditions of approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right. So we have one more order of business for tonight.
I do. So so tonight, we have Kittleson, a traffic engineer. They actually do our traffic, and they're our traffic consultants. And the city was able to obtain a grant for $120,000 with a $30,000 match to create and write a Stayton safety action plan, which has been going on since the spring and the summer. And we're really happy because we're at the end for the draft plan. And Kittleson is here to provide you with some feedback. Larry was here and Steve Sims was here for the previous meeting today with the Public Advisory Committee. And it will be a little different here because they know that this is new to most of you. So I'll let them take it.
Thanks, Jennifer. And good evening, Commission and Commissioner Chair. Thank you for having us. Thank you, Jennifer. So my name is Nick Gross. I'm a project manager and transportation planner with Kittleson and Associates. We are a transportation planning and engineering firm in Portland, Eugene, and Bend. And with me tonight is Amy Griffiths, my colleague here. We are going to give a relatively brief presentation on the overview of the development of the city's safety action plan. Our agenda will go through some of the engagement that's been conducted in the development of the plan. Amy will cover some of the detailed work as well as the treatments and strategies and high priority locations that were outcomes of that technical work, your kind of hotspot locations, and then ways that you can track implementation and the success of this plan over time. And we'll wrap up with some next steps in discussion. So big picture, what is a safety action plan? It's a specific plan that guides the city's investment in your transportation system around safety specifically. So you have a transportation system plan. This is a little bit more honed in specifically looking at crash data and risk of people walking, biking, driving on your transportation system. It includes a Vision Zero statement that recognizes and sets a goal of 0 traffic deaths and serious injuries. That is a very specific requirement of this plan. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as it relates to what we call the safe system approach. Jennifer mentioned that this work that we've done was funded by a grant. The completion and adoption of this safety action plan will set the city up to pursue the next line of grants, which is your implementation grants, to actually implement the recommendations from this plan. You cannot pursue the US DOT grants for implementation and demonstration projects until you've adopted and approved and developed a safety action plan. So this is really the critical first step to the full picture towards implementation. And we've outlined and built this plan around those very specific requirements that the US DOT Safe Streets and Roads for All grant requires. The safe system approach is kind of the methodology and framework that we use now in modern transportation planning to guide the development of safety. It is a bit of a rework to the traditional approach in addressing transportation safety. Some of the big picture items, they're shown here in the wheel, but I'll discuss them briefly. It's recognizing that deaths and serious injuries are unacceptable. It also recognizes that humans make mistakes. So fender benders happen, you know, people are humans and we make mistakes, but we can eliminate fatal and serious injury crashes. It also recognizes that safety is proactive. So it's not just about where your crashes are occurring. It's also about where the high risk locations are. So we don't just want to react to where crashes happen. We want to be in front of those crashes and prevent them from happening. And it also kind of leans on this notion of redundancy. So redundancy, kind of illustrated in this Swiss cheese model, recognizes that fatal and serious injury crashes only occur when all of the layers break down of this safe system approach. So if we can implement these critical elements of this safe system wheel, which is sort of everyone playing their part in the system, it really kind of takes the perfect storm for a serious injury or death to occur. So just building in layers of redundancy. The planning area and scope for the safety action plan, it is focused on the city limits, and it's even more so specifically focused on the city-owned streets. So there are several county-owned roadways within the city limits. Some projects we have identified on county roads, but we really tried to focus on city-owned streets, recognizing the opportunity for the city to implement these recommendations. And our study area also included the broader urban growth boundary. On engagement, we had several committees. The Public Advisory Committee met earlier this evening. We've had a project management team meeting with staff, as well as a technical advisory committee, police department, county staff, even some technical residents and others as part of the technical advisory committee. The roles for these committees and groups has really helped us guide the development of the plan, review all of the interim memorandums, a lot of the technical work, and promoted awareness with the plan as we worked on that. Public events, we've held 2 public open houses. I believe, well, one was in this room and then the other was over at the library. We held them early in the process. We then kind of developed an understanding of the needs, kind of the local context and experience of people walking, biking, driving in Stayton. We went back out and presented the safety countermeasures and recommendations, got additional feedback on those. And then the Public Advisory Committee has now met twice. With that, I'll pass it to my colleague here, Amy Griffiths, to give an overview of more of the technical work and the needs around safety in state.
I'm going to summarize our crash and roadway network data analysis, where we identified trends in the existing gaps and deficiencies in the network, and then talk next about the recommendations that are documented in the plan. So we looked at the most recent 5 years of available Oregon Department of Transportation's crash data, again within the urban growth boundary, and there were a total of 300 crashes in the city of Stayton over the 5-year period, which was, I believe, from 2018 to 2022 was the most recent available. And the different dots on this map show where there are different severities of crashes, including the fatal crashes that have occurred in the roadway network. And so we also looked at the available roadway network data and understood where there are gaps in pedestrian and bicycle facilities, where there are arterial roadways which have higher volumes and higher speeds of vehicles, where there are roadways with higher posted speeds, where there are key activity generators where we expect vulnerable users who need extra safety, including senior centers and schools and parks, to understand where are the locations that have there's two things that need to be present for a crash to occur. There's both the exposure, so there has to be someone there, and then speeds are related to kinetic energy transfer, and so higher speeds means that their crashes will be more severe. And so we looked at these proven risk factors based on available data to identify high-risk locations. We then developed what we call a composite risk and injury network. And so like Nick was saying, safety is proactive. And so we looked both at where there is a history of severe crashes or frequency of crashes, developing a high injury network, and then overlaying those risk factors we talked about to identify a composite risk and injury network. And so we have mapped where the history of crashes overlaps with the risk for crashes. And the Golf Club Road has both of those characteristics present. Washington Street has both of those characteristics present. Cascade Highway has both of those characteristics present. And then First Avenue has a high concentration of crashes and more severe crashes. And so so this is one piece of the existing conditions analysis, is understanding in Stayton where is there risk or severity of crashes, so that we can identify improvements to address those locations. And then we also developed emphasis areas. So this is characteristics in common of the crashes. So where are those crashes happening? Who is most at risk of experiencing fatal and serious injury crashes? And what contributing factors are there? And so the 3 emphasis areas in Stayton include intersections. So compared to roadway segments, intersections are more likely to have crashes and are more likely to have more severe crashes. This is common in urban areas just because intuitively you understand that where there are overlapping paths at an intersection, it's more likely that a crash could occur. In some more rural areas, you might see the reverse because along segments, there's high speeds. There's more focus on intersections within this plan. Vulnerable road users, so those are people walking, biking, using mobility devices, and also motorcyclists are more likely to be seriously injured or killed if a crash occurs. They don't have the same protection as vehicle drivers do, and so when a crash occurs, even if it's at a lower speed, it's just still more likely to be more severe. And so we have to pay special attention to creating safe environments for those vulnerable road users. And then risky driver behaviors, so impairment, speeding, and distracted driving led to more crashes occurring and more severe crashes occurring. And so especially speeding and impairment leading to the higher severity of crashes. And so those 2 factors, this map showing where crashes are occurring and where there's risk for crashes, as well as these three focus areas. Were kind of the first stage that we brought to the public and got more input on what are those concerns people have, what are they experiencing in the network. And then we developed systemic treatments and strategies and location-specific treatments and strategies. And so first I'll talk about the systemic ones. These tend to gear towards lower cost strategies that could be implemented broadly in Stayton so that you're overall creating more better safety in the roadway network. The location-specific are ones that we paid extra special attention to, and I'll talk about those in a bit, but where we actually went into the field and walked the corridors. We asked for more specific feedback from the public, and we took a more detailed look at the crash history at those locations. So first, the systemic treatments and strategies. So we looked at the emphasis areas, we looked at the community input of best practices, and we recommended those. So this table, which was included in your packet, is quite small, so I'll read it out. Talks about what those systemic strategies were. So for intersections, we identified 2, which included low-cost countermeasures at stop-controlled intersections. And so within the plan appendix, there's some sheets that show what these include, as well as some candidate locations to start. But that includes advanced warning signage, for example, the doubled up signs. And so kind of near the more edge of the city, it's some people sometimes aren't aware that an intersection is occurring, especially visitors. And so this helps warn people of those intersections and can help address and reduce crashes. And then updating the state land use and development code to increase safety analysis and mitigation. We know that the land use and development code was recently updated, but this is just included in the plan because over time, there continues to be increased efforts to help make sure that in addition to considering operations with development, we're considering safety. And so just setting up you all to advance that as those developments continue to occur. Vulnerable road users have quite a few different strategies. So this includes crossing enhancements, so making it easier for people to cross the street, traffic calming, so slowing speeds, especially in residential streets. There's quite a few wider streets in Stayton. For example, 3rd Avenue was a candidate location that we talked about with the public as well as with the Public Advisory Committee, but there's just the wider roads sometimes create opportunities for people to speed. And so making sure that we're reducing speeding happening on the local streets where we want people to be able to kind of safely access different destinations. Filling in gaps in the sidewalk and bicycle network is a big priority, as well, kind of separating roadway users and giving everybody dedicated facilities can really increase safety. And then updating roadway design standards. So historically, roadway design standards typically really just focus on what is the vehicular need for the street. But now over time, those are being updated to promote what we call context sensitive design, which says, if you're in a downtown core environment, such as 1st Avenue, you don't necessarily want to be encouraging people to be able to travel fast through the street. You want to be encouraging kind of the appropriate speeds for that land use context. And then we have a couple appropriate posted speeds for all road users, as well as 20 is plenty. So cities are able to reduce the posted speed for local and collector roadways to 5 miles per hour from the default in Oregon. And the default in Oregon for those local streets is 25. And so 20 is plenty is really a recognition that the lower speeds helps reduce both the likelihood of a crash occurring because it increases how much a driver is able to see, as well as it reduces the severity of a crash if it does occur because of the lower speeds. And then for risky driver behaviors, we have dynamic speed feedback signs, which are those signs that tell you what speed you're driving to help encourage you to travel the posted speed limit. The hardened center lines and turn wedges are, I don't know if we have an image in this presentation, but those are, I think we do. we just gave a public advisory committee presentation and we did not have these graphics, so I'll just pan through them briefly, but the low-cost countermeasures, as I've shown, is the advanced warning signs, the updated land use development code, again, is more of a policy. The vulnerable road users, we have an image of like an improved crossing with a warning sign, traffic calming, could be a speed hump, could be quite a few other features that we talked about in the plan, filling in sidewalk gaps, and then filling in bicycle gaps. We've got the policies I just talked about. The risky driver behaviors. This image shows a movable speed feedback sign that you can move around the city just to help encourage people on different streets to travel the posted speed. And then the hardened center lines and turn wedges are this like plastic, sometimes with the flex posts sticking up, that really helps make it more, it helps with driver compliance. So people are turning slower and they're staying in their lanes better because even trucks can still go over, for example, those turn wedges that you see in the screen, but the average driver will more naturally follow the appropriate path at a slower speed to create better safety for pedestrians as well as just for all road users. And then risky behaviors, we have some policies. So one is education campaigns. You guys already have safety towns being implemented in the schools. So this is an image of some of the students being taught roadway safety and about emergency response. So these are great programs to just continue to expand. Targeted and high visibility enforcement. So just using the composite risk and injury network to help you identify locations that are good ones for a little bit more enforcement can be a good strategy, and making sure that that's really focused on where there's the best impact. And then developing automatic traffic enforcement policies and programs. This is one that the language in the plan really is just setting you all up in the future to work on those policies that align with best practices. For example, some best practices indicate you should always put automatic enforcement paired with the speed feedback sign so that people know the speed that they're traveling before and have an opportunity to slow down before the automatic enforcement is used. And then also making sure that any ticket revenue from automatic enforcement is reinvested back directly into safety at that location is also a good way to gather more public support. But this plan is not recommending this in the near term, just recommending setting up the opportunities to follow those best practices when that is adopted more broadly. And then I'm going to go into the proposed location-specific treatments. So we have 5 priority sites identified. We looked at the composite risk and injury network and looked at where those were generally overlapping. And then we also looked to see which of those facilities were generally city-owned facilities where there's most impact for you all to make improvements. And so 4 of these locations, 3 of these locations, Locust, Washington, and Ida, are city-owned facilities. First Ave is county-owned, but we did decide to still advance those as priority sites because of both the crash history as well as the fact that the county is working on the design phase of this project. And so it's a good opportunity to add additional safety enhancements to that project to be able to leverage some of those joint efforts. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what was recommended for each of these locations. First Avenue, there's already improvements from the county to add a pedestrian crossing at Locust Street, I believe. And then there's also going to be improvements to the sidewalks, some of them, and then especially the curb ramps. And then we're recommending adding speed feedback signs, looking into opportunities to add landscaped medians at a couple locations where there's some gaps in between driveways that really provides traffic calming and a more comfortable streetscape environment. We're recommending align with the TSP, widen sidewalks. Access management is on the table as well. And that's something that the county is also interested in, but we recognize that that might be a longer term recommendation just due to some current public pushback on that access management. So it would really help with some of the safety, but might be a longer term need. And then protected left turn phasing, that would require some additional engineering analysis for the operations, but looking into changing some of the signals to just be to add the protected left turn phasing and just make it protected only. It really can improve pedestrian safety. And then, but there's other signal improvements that could also be made depending on operations feasibility, such as leading pedestrian interval to allow pedestrians to cross just slightly before vehicles are able to cross, and then enhanced crossings. And so we heard from the public interest in improving the crossing at Regis Street, and then also desire for enhanced crossing opportunities at Cedar Street and Hollister Street. So further engineering and design could refine some of those locations, but we just wanted to include some of the feedback from the public into those improvements. First Avenue and Marion Street. So this is kind of right where we are right now. And so we heard feedback about just challenges seeing pedestrians on that crossing, because especially in the winter, there's a little bit of a vertical curvature of the vertical crest of the roadway. And just people talk about it's really challenging to cross that location, and it's a very key pedestrian generator with the community center and the library both right here. And so we have recommended realigning the intersection so that there's not there's basically better visibility for drivers, as well as implementing an RRFB, rectangular rapid flashing beacon. So those flashing lights that are triggered when you press a push button to improve just visibility and compliance for people crossing the street. We just connected with the PAC, and we heard more interest in implementing a pedestrian refuge island to help with the crossings. You can take it in 2 stage, so it's like kind of those medians in the middle of the roadway where people can cross. And we also heard that there's some interest in potentially, realigning the intersection, but keeping the right turn lane. And so we're planning on slightly modifying this plan just to really make sure that those 2 options are considered. This is just a concept, so there would be a little bit more refinement before it would be brought to design, but thought that those are both good pieces of feedback to advance into the next stage. Locust Street was the next location. So this is a collector roadway in the city. There's some schools in the area. And so today it's kind of an unstriped roadway. There are some sidewalk gaps. And so we're recommending, consistent with the transportation system plan, adding bike lanes, filling in the sidewalk gaps and widening the sidewalk. And narrowing the travel lanes a little bit, consistent with current best practices from an engineering perspective, moving fixed objects. There's a location where there's a couple of fixed objects that have been hit multiple times, and then also adding some traffic calming, so potentially some speed cushions. There's a ways to put those in with that make it easier still for emergency response to still travel as they need to, but still slow the average driver, raise intersections, particularly at the intersection with Gardner by the school, chicanes, access management, curb extensions. That's where kind of there's the bump outs in the roadway that make shortened crossings and slower speeds, and then potentially painted intersections such as at Locust and Gardner. And so with all of these treatments, we worked to be consistent with the transportation system plan, and we do include that these are conceptual design only. In the appendix, there's some more bullets for what analysis needs to be done, just to make sure that there's a proper discussion with the public around some different trade-offs associated with some of these roadway design elements.
So I can't be like planning, oh, this is when I have to have this, I have to figure out what I'm even writing for.
From
There,
first,
but
this is I think a major collector roadway, so slightly higher classification, but it's definitely a freight route. It might be just a normal collector, but it's definitely a freight route. So this has a little bit of a higher level of treatments than some of the other facilities, and it doesn't able to have some of the traffic calling elements aren't appropriate with the amount of freight, but we are recommending changing from the skip striping to the double yellow lines, which indicates no passing. We heard back from the public that especially more on the western section of the corridor, people are passing at high speeds, which is not really the intent of the street. Consistent with the TSP, Transportation System Plan, we have added bike lanes. We've widened the sidewalk and filled sidewalk gaps. And then we've added crossing enhancements to make it easier to cross the street, raised intersections, potential for painted intersections, access management, trimming vegetation to improve visibility, and then advancing the TSP recommendation for a roundabout. Wherever possible, we just want to be consistent with the transportation system plan, and then also identify those further analysis that would need to be done before implementation. Ida Street is the third location, and this one, the transportation system plan only indicates sharrows, and so we've recommended installing sidewalks where there are gaps, repaving and restriping the roadway with a solid center line, again, to help make the street feel a little bit smaller, installing sharrows, ensuring fixed objects are clear of the roadway, speed cushions, raised intersections, again, those curb extensions to shorten pedestrian crossings, improving crossings at a couple key locations, potentially painted intersections, and then again, advancing the roundabout that's at the intersection between Ida, Washington, and Wilco. And so, yeah, we walked some of these corridors, and I think as you guys all experience these corridors, there's not high parking utilization, and so striping the roadway really helps visually for drivers understand that it's not just a big wide open road where you can travel quickly, but it's somewhere where you should travel a little bit more slowly and be aware of the people who are living right along the roadway. So those are the strategies and recommendations that we have identified, and we use some of those visuals that we showed today to help support kind of grant applications that can be attached. And they're really intended to help scope what a project would include in the design phase. Prioritization. So we prioritize another requirement of the safe SS4A, Safe Streets and Roads for All requirements is that you prioritize projects into timeframes based on clear criteria. We use the following criteria, which is expected safety performance. So there's published crash reduction factors associated with these treatments that we described today, as well as the safe system approach that Nick described today has a hierarchy of how big of an improvement or how big of a crash reduction you're expecting to get out of that treatment. And so things like installing sidewalks is a high benefit because it really is physically separating users in the roadways. And so those would score high for that type of treatment. And then the amount of time, energy, or cost required for implementation was also considered. So if it's easy to implement or low cost, then that makes it a better candidate for a near-term implementation. But if it takes a long time, then it would be more in the long term. And then ability to implement interim or quick build project phases was also included. So there's some different treatments that we've identified you could do as a pilot project to gather some public support, see how you like it, and then what safety impacts it has. And then you could later on make it more permanent. So for example, the curb extensions we talked about, which is the bump outs where the corner of the roadway kind of comes more into the intersection. Those can be done with flex post delineators and paint. So like physical cylinders that are circular in the roadway and then some paint. And then if you find that it's having the appropriate, you measure speed before and after, and you find that people are slowing down and people are having an easier time crossing the street, then you could physically put it in with concrete. So that's kind of an example. So if it's able to be quick built, there's good opportunity to put that in the near term. Support from partners. So for example, First Avenue got put in the near term because the county has already designed, has already made a design for that, and they're looking to implement it in the near term. And so if you're able to add on to that in the near term, that's a good candidate for that type of project. And then if was public support at the different meetings, then we put that more in the near term, or a need for education in general we could put more in the near term, whereas if it was a little bit less of a preference or less top of mind for the public, maybe it wasn't prioritized as quickly. And then we also have performance measures. I know this is a lot that we're all sharing, but lots in this plan. So hopefully you guys had a chance to take a look. But it's important for the Safe SS4A grants to have performance metrics and transparency for how you're reporting out progress towards implementing the plan. And so we have two types of performance measures. There's implementation measures and there's also outcome measures. And so the idea is that crash data takes a little while to see some of the benefits associated with the improvements that you're making. And so first, what you're doing is you're saying how many of these systemic strategies have we implemented? How many of these location-specific strategies have we implemented? And then as outcome metrics, you're measuring and reporting on how many crashes are you having each year? How many fatal and serious injury crashes are you having, consistent with tracking to support your Vision Zero goal? And then also focusing on those emphasis areas. And so the idea is that over time, you'll see a decrease in the total number of crashes, the total number of fatal and serious injury crashes, and the total number of those crashes that are occurring within those emphasis areas. And then over time, you can still assess if you're implementing the metrics here and if you need, and you're not seeing the reductions you would like to see, or if you're seeing more reductions in certain areas, you can change what's in the near, medium, long term, or add additional strategies as needed. And then there's also some implementation and monitoring. So future funding, we've listed in the plan some federal, state, and local grants. Some of these will change names over time. For example, SS4A is a federal grant that it still is in place. Sometimes this will change names, so we kind of indicated that. But there's also some state grants that can be accessed. A lot of the countermeasures we looked at, we pulled from ODOT's All Road Transportation Safety Program, which that in and of itself has grants available for funding. And then there's also local opportunities to fund future projects. And then over time, you can review new crash data annually and compare that to performance metrics. We provided to Jennifer and team an instruction form of how to pull that data and how to use it to track these performance metrics. And then over time, you can update goals and assign new priorities as needed.
Yeah, so yes, that was a lot from Amy. Just real quick on next steps. So we're going to open it up here for questions and discussion, but looking out a couple of weeks, we will be coming back to City Council for a work session, and then a couple more weeks after that, looking to eventually move this to an adoption hearing with Council in early November, which is a requirement for, again, pursuing the next round of implementation grant dollars. So just two questions to pose. One would be questions generally about the safety action plan and the safe system approach that we took to develop the plan, and then what programs or resources could be allocated to help support the safety goals and strategies that have been identified in this plan. And of course, we're very welcome to any other questions or comments you have. So thank you for your time and listening to the presentation.
So I guess I just have, and I don't know, Julia, maybe you know, or Jennifer. So on First Street with County Road and the veterinary clinic doing their rebuild of the whole block, are they widening sidewalks in accordance with the requirements? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that I believe they are. I don't know how wide they are, but they definitely worked with Marion County to come up with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
I'm just trying to
So I think for the commission, it's key, and I know you know, Melissa, but this is a plan. Plans are what they are, and things can be brought forward, moved back, and implement a piece of one in the near term, you implement that and do a test. So some people look at these as this is hard. It's not, it's a plan, and that's what's meant to be available. So as we do improvements within the city, and there are opportunities to make safety improvements at the same time, we can touch on this plan, and that's how it's usually implemented. So again, what we said earlier about First Street and the development going out, there's opportunities to do some of the First Street treatments. So For us tonight, our role here is make a recommendation.
We get that
Go ahead.
question.
Want me to make a question? Oh, I'm sorry.
You have a question?
No, go ahead. Are you gonna?
All right. In this plan, there's a big picture of a school bus with kids getting on it. Did you contact any school bus drivers about their ideas about curb extensions or anything like that? Because I am a school bus driver and I drive a 40-foot bus and curb extensions are my nightmare. I can't make turns on those things. My back wheels go over the curb every single time. So if you're gonna put a curb extension at the corner of Locust and Gardner, that would be a nightmare for all those bus drivers. So you need to think about including a truck driver or a school bus driver in your plans, in the future going on forward.
Yeah. I've been watching the whole, Vision Zero process, since it started back in 2014. And some other agencies I was working with, and New York was the first one, in 2014, and Portland was one of the first adopters in 2015. And they just finished their 10-year audit. But after spending close to $200 million, what they find is they now have an increase in accidents and an increase in traffic deaths. And if you go through the audit, there's a lot of really key points in there. But one of them that kind of really stood out for me was that one of the cheapest and quickest interventions is wholesale reduction in speed limits. It's really easy to do. You need some signs, maybe a few flashing lights, but without a very draconian enforcement method to make sure those new speed limits are adhered to, what you end up with is a mismatch in speed, which causes more accidents and more severe accidents. So, and with the budget deficits that we have in ODOT, I'm afraid that we're gonna wander into this, well, let's just reduce everything to 15 miles an hour in town, then we'll have no accidents. So it's not a decision you're making. I know this is just the proposal, but as we go into steps of this, I really want to keep that in mind, that to look at what other cities have done and did it do what we're projecting it to do. And Portland is a great example. I mean, because they've got 10 years of this, and I know you're out of Portland, so you're probably really aware of it. So I just want to make that statement, but if you want to respond to it, that's great too.
Yeah, it's a really great comment. Just a couple things that come to mind. One would be back to that notion of redundancy, right? So you can reduce speeds, but if that's the only thing you're doing, you're not going to see the results, and you could actually see almost the opposite of what you're trying to accomplish with that. So the safe system approach, that wheel that I showed at the beginning of the presentation, talking about redundancy, it's really recognizing that there are many components that are needed, and it's a partnership, not just through engineering, but through education and through speed reduction and through safer vehicles and new technology. And when you overlay all these elements, you're just increasing the likelihood for fatal and serious injuries to be eliminated. And speeds is very much a critical element of that. Amy spoke about kind of kinetic energy briefly, and it gets a little technical, but at the end of the day, it's actually very simple. Higher speeds mean more serious injury, crashes, and fatal crashes, whether you're walking, biking, or driving. So there is more than just changing the posted speed limit. There are infrastructure improvements that reduce speed. There's signing and striping, but it is a very valid point. And there have been communities that have achieved Vision Zero. They're far and few between, but I think and setting a goal anything less than 0 deaths and 0 serious injuries is just feels like accepting serious injuries or deaths is not the right goal.
Further discussion? All right. So, yep.
For those of you that don't know me, I'm Julia Hyduk, I'm the city manager, and I was just standing in the back, but, excuse me. I guess I want to share with the planning commission, something that the consultants aren't going to share, but really why we started this project, in the first place. Yes, we want safety, we want, no fatalities or crashes. We also want, improvements to our infrastructure. We want to be able to apply for federal grants, and they certainly stated that this is a prerequisite for us applying for Safe Streets for All construction grants. And so just the focus is unlikely going to be just how can we do this the cheapest and easiest way. We want to be strategic with our infrastructure requests to build sidewalks, build bike lanes, improve intersections, maybe have some road improvements. So that's sort of the reason why we started this project in the first place. With their assistance, we have, I think, included a lot more things than we had originally envisioned, which is wonderful, but I just wanted to make sure the planning commission kind of knew what started this, and it wasn't just to be like other cities. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, at this point, it's really our role to recommend adoption. It goes further to the city council for work session. The city council is the ones that actually adopt the plan. So, any discussion around that? So I would entertain a motion.
I'll move that the Stayton Planning Commission recommend that the city council adopt the Stayton Safety Action Plan as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. With that said, is there anything else for the planning commission?
No.
Okay, very good. We stand adjourned. No bulldogs.
No. Hi, Amy. Hi, Amy.
Hi.
Hi.
My name's Chuck Roberts. I think I've come by twice to talk. I was at a meeting, so
Oh.
I live on Golf Club Road.
Okay, we're done. We are done. Ending.
Golf course.
Yes.
I just wonder where we are.